Jared, we're so delighted to have you here at Sun City to talk to our residents about the Triangle. Tell me where the Triangle is located.
Well, it's right here around you. So the triangle is just a simple word for the three roads that make up SC 170, 278, and Argent Boulevard. So they formed a triangle, so we named it the Triangle.
Okay, sounds pretty simple to me and something people can relate to, the Triangle. Now, what are your short-term fixes for this area?
Yep. So we know that safety and capacity are both issues on all three of these roads. And initially, we're starting out with work on SC 170. We've actually got some of that work starting right now. And we're working on specific intersections and improvements, basically from 462 all the way down to 278. So some of the main improvements being at 278 and 170 at the interchange there, and making better flow in and around that interchange. So you'll start seeing those in the near future.
Wonderful.
Jared Frakes. He is the Assistant County Administrator, Infrastructure. Jared is all over. I mean, if you're in the government or if you're doing something, Jared is always talking. He's a great speaker, and I think you'll enjoy it.
Thank you. Yeah, when Councilman Kemp asked me to speak, again, he said, yeah, it'd be about 40 people. And then I don't know the number, but it's closer to 400 than 40. So, hey, thank you for coming. Appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you guys about the Triangle and traffic. Real quick, by a show of hands, can you tell me if you have seen an accident on 170? I haven't finished the question. You'll know the question. On 170, 278, or Argent Boulevard in the last month? All right, second question. Have any of you been stuck in traffic in the last week on any of those roads? All right. How many people think nobody's doing anything to solve this? That's right. Well, today my hope is that I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we have going on and hopefully inform you of what is taking place behind the scenes. It's not always visible because cones on the road is the very last step to getting a project completed. There's a lot of steps on the forefront of that before you actually see work on the road. So we're going to cover that today. Again, I'm Assistant County Administrator from Beaufort County. We are in Jasper County, but just like drivers, you probably don't know when you're in Jasper County versus Beaufort County. You probably don't care who the road belongs to, whether it's DOT or a county or city of Hardeeville. You just want the road working so you can drive where you want to get to, right? So again, I'm here not because it's Jasper County or Beaufort County, but we're all working on this solution together. So the Triangle Project, what is it specifically? So we started on SC 170, and if you go all the way to the top, that's at 462 when you go towards the interstate there, and just down past 278 to, it's not Del Webb, but right here at Oakity Center South where the food line entrance in. So that's what we started with, and we said, you know what? We're doing all this work because we know that 170 needs improvements, but we hear a lot about Argent Boulevard, we hear a lot about 278. If you're going to do a project, the project is the same whether you've got a $10 million project or a $100 million project. So why don't we kind of look at this all together rather than do one project, then wait a couple of years, do another project, wait another couple of years, do another project. So why don't we put it all together? So we said, okay, let's look at the three roads. So 170 and then 278 back to Argent Boulevard, and then Argent Boulevard from 278 to 170. Us creative engineers said, man, that kind of looks like a triangle. So hence the name, the Triangle Project. And I got asked just beforehand from Miss Martha, and it's like, where exactly is the triangle? You guys are in the very center of this triangle, so y'all are hitting all these roads on a daily basis, I'm sure. So again, my goal is to inform you guys and let you know we are working on this. Real quick, so, and if you've heard this before, I know Ms. Tabb and Chairman Passman, you're not allowed to answer. But a two-lane road carries, does anybody have any clue how many cars a two-lane road carries, just rough numbers, per day? The maximum. 30,000? 60,000? Y'all are a little bit high, 20. That was right, 20,000. So if you look at a 2-lane road, 20,000 cars. This is just high level, just so you can get a feeling for it. So a 4-lane road, by that math, would hold how many? 40,000, right? And then a 6-lane road would be 60. Okay, so on 170, we are at 37,000 VPD, vehicles per day. So we are very near 40,000. So that leads you to believe once you get to that, you're just rough numbers, you know that road, if it's a 4-lane road, is close to its max capacity. So it makes sense why we're having capacity issues is because it's carrying the volume that a 4-lane road can carry. Similarly, on Argent Boulevard, it's a 2-lane, it's at 13,000. So again, 20,000 for a 2-lane road. So it's not at capacity, but there's pinch points along the way and growth and construction, and we know that, and we'll get to that. And then lastly, on 278, it's about 34,000. So again, it's not quite there, but it's getting close. And I don't know if I have the next one. Yeah. So when these two, so this is the highest traffic, 65,000 vehicles per day in the entire Jasper, Beaufort County area. And that makes sense again because you've got 34,000 and 37,000 colliding, getting on, most of them coming around this circle and headed there towards the easterly towards Hilton Head. So that lane is already 6 lanes, but with 65,000, that section, if you've driven that, it really, there's some traffic, and then once you get through it, it starts getting a little bit better. So what have we done so far? So this is not something new. We actually started and completed in 2017 and completed a traffic study on 170. So again, from basically 278 up to 462 in 2017 and completed a study in 2019. Now this was done, we have a regional planning group called LATS, Low Country Area Transportation Study. That's our regional planning group. So again, that's not a Beaufort County or a Jasper County or Hardeeville, that's everybody working together. So this study was commissioned by LATS in 2017, and it gave improvements of what needs to happen on 170. Concurrently, or shortly thereafter, Hardeeville commissioned a study on Argent Boulevard. So from, again, the limits from 278 to 170. Same thing, so he gave recommendations, of which one was widening, some intersection improvements. And then lastly, we said, you know what, let's go ahead, if we're going to talk about this triangle, let's do a study on the last segment, so 278. So all these are, when you're looking at an infrastructure project, you've got to have a beginning, a ground point, a conceptual plan, and this is that. So all this work is in motion, which is very slow work. We've still got cars that are getting into accidents every day, but this is the foundation. Every house has a foundation. This is the foundation of improvements to what we're planning on bringing to the area. So first, again, this was the first one. The good thing is we have the plan, so it says this is the recommendations, the improvements that need to be made. The worst part is it was $80 million for the improvements on 170. So that's not jump change. It's not something we can just, okay, let's get this project out the door. We got to figure out how we're going to do that. So how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So we said, you know what, why don't we split this project up? $80 million is going to be really hard for us to go and grab the funds for that. But what can we do in the short term? And then while we're at short term, is there anything midterm? And then obviously long term is a full widening and traffic improvement at specific intersections. So what we did about, I guess, a year and a half, 2 years ago now, we made an agreement, worked with Weeby and Beaufort County, worked with Jasper County and the town of Hardeeville. And out of this study, there was 9 short-term specific projects, pinch points, from 462, mostly focused at intersections where we see some difficulties and some traffic issues. And they said, if you do these improvements, it should cost about $3 million. So we said, okay, how can we get that going? And so we came up with agreement, a split between the 3 entities, and we said, all right, we don't have $80 million, but at least now we have $3 million, and let's get this project out. So the project, and I'm sorry if anybody was at, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, I gave a similar presentation to the Southern Sun City. Do you guys have a name for that? This is Northern, this is North? Okay, and south, so y'all use the indicator. Okay, I didn't know if y'all had it. Y'all need to come up with a better nickname than just north and south. So anyhow, a lot of the same presentation that I gave a couple months ago to Sun City South, but a few more updates along the way. So the good thing is these are the problem areas that were identified in the report, and you can see the different numbers here in an illustration, and I'll go through them shortly. And basically describe. So again, about 2 years ago, we said, let's get started with the short-term projects. We went into design, we went through the permitting process, and during this past summer, we went through the construction process. The interesting thing is, and this does not happen very often, is DOT had a planned project in the area that they were going to do some resurfacing, basically from on top of the bridge to the first bridge there at Oakity River. Some of the asphalt's getting old and raveling. And they said, we're going to do that project, but we're going to do it in 2 years. We're like, it wouldn't be great if we did our project and then you come back later. Can we just put it together? And that was not an easy conversation with DOT. You could probably imagine that, especially trying to get them to spend their money faster versus 2 years away. But finally, they did agree to that. So not only are we going to do the projects that we have specified that I'll talk about in just a second, but we're also going to incorporate DOT's paving that they were going to do. So it made it a bigger project, so we got some economies of scale working for us when we went out to bid. And so what are those specific intersections? So starting on the south, and we'll work our way up. This is at Oakity Center South, so the food line is to the north off the page. And we hear a lot of times about getting out at this exit. Well, part of the study did a traffic analysis. So in order to put a signal at an intersection, it has to meet so many warrants. And that's not a county thing, that's not a DOT thing, that's a national federal standard. So it's got to meet so many warrants, and it's usually dictated by the side road. So it's not how many cars are going down the main road, it's how many cars are turning onto the side road or how many cars are trying to turn off of the side road onto the main road. And that's what typically triggers a signal. Well, this location, that signal isn't quite warranted yet. But we're like, okay, well, what other improvements can we do at the intersection? Has anybody ever sat at this intersection like, I'm never going to get out, and you get frustrated and you say, you know what, I'm just going to turn right and I'll figure out how to do a U-turn and I'll come back around. Has anybody done that? You are savvy drivers, and that is called an R-cut. So if anybody asks you, you are not just an average driver, you are above average driver, because that is a very safe movement and is what we have planned at this intersection. So this is a little hard to see, and I'll try to describe it. So again, the food line is right there, and what's planned here is for you to take that. You're already, if you're sitting in traffic today and you can't get out, you're already making that right turn movement. So this is just reinforcing that movement and giving the opportunity for somebody to make a safe U-turn at that section. And then we do allow for you to turn into the food line road, but not out of. So if you're coming out, you will only have a right in and a right out option. But then we're making a safe opportunity for somebody to do a U-turn and then go back the opposite direction. So this is as much as we can get approved without meeting the warrant for a signal. If more development happens specifically on the southern side and it comes to that intersection, that can be reevaluated, but it's just not today. It's kind of where we are. So this is as much improvement as we can squeak out with DOT's blessing in the current situation that we have in front of us. So it may be different, but that's what we're aiming for right there, and hopefully that'll help some of the traffic trying to get out. So 278, so this is 170 is across the board, 278 towards I-95 to the top, and Hilton Head down to the south. So right here currently we have a signal, we have a right turn with an acceleration lane, and then we have a single left turn. I don't typically come this way a lot as far as getting off this and turning left, so I don't see it, but even on today as I was coming here, there was a heavy backup right here of folks trying to turn left. So what we're doing there, and again, the short-term idea is to what can we do with existing pavement for, if we're adding lanes and adding pavement, it gets really expensive. So we got $3 million, how much can we get done? So what we're doing is reorienting the signal a little bit, and we're going to keep the right turn lane with a free flow condition, and then we're going to add a second lane. So you're going to have two lefts out of this intersection getting onto 170. Also, what you can see is we're kind of making a concrete median there, so we're separating that traffic because we don't want it directly across to the on-ramp. And the reason is this is the biggest improvement that we're going to see in the area is currently the way this operates. Let me go back. Is you can see people stacking right there, and you get a green light, and it's who's got the bigger engine and press the pedal the fastest to get to the loop to get on the bridge. So we see a lot of people stacking up in that outside lane, and then if you're a savvy driver and a race car driver, you get in the fast lane and you punch it as soon as it green lights so you can get over there. So what we recognized when we did the traffic study is that right turn to go north or westbound isn't really that utilized. So rarely do you see a line of cars trying to turn right. So what we're doing in this improvement at this location is we're going to start the turn lane to get onto the traffic circle right at the existence. So when you're coming out of Oakity Crossing North, and then this is a divided free flow lane. So the only time that lane is ever going to stop is when there is a car that wants to turn left and head west on 278. Otherwise, that lane at the very top is going to be a free flow. There will be a divided, concrete divided median between that lane and the two through lanes to create that situation where we can have free flow. Any questions on that? Is that, if I'm not explaining it well, it's kind of hard to see on these engineer plans. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have a pointer either. So on 278, let's see, hold on. All right, this one, let me get to the slide here. All right, this is a better picture of it. So this is the movement that we're going to free up. So like I said, we're going to extend this turn lane through the intersection all the way to the intersection at the very north. All that's going to be storage capacity for people trying to get on 278. But what we have at the top, you've got this clover leaf, and then we've got two lanes that are going 65 mile an hour and one lane that's going 25 mile an hour to try to catch up and merge into. Also, what we have currently is this lane comes, and this lane eventually has its own lane. It never has to merge into the two lanes of traffic. It has a free flow at the end of that. So we're going to switch it. We're going to give the third lane at this point. So this car does not have to merge on the 278. They come up the traffic circle and they have it. And then this on-ramp merges into the already three lanes. Does that make sense? So really not a lot of work to do there because there's already asphalt right here. It's simply DOT was going to resurface this and the ramps as part of their project. And we said, well, let us do it and we'll restripe it to this, what I just described, as part of the resurfacing project. So not only will it be brand new asphalt, but this will have a full turn lane or a full travel lane so that merge won't have to take place anymore at the top of the bridge. All right, at Tide Watch, and Chairman Passman's in the room, so just to orient, so this is Tide Watch signal back on 170. This is Riverbend here, and then Sun City North. Y'all still need a better name than just North. Does Riverbend have a name? Y'all don't have a nickname for Riverbend? All right, next time I come back, I want to hear new names for each of these three. What about Sun City that's going across Argent? Y'all got a name for them? All right. I thought engineers were not creative. Y'all are less creative than we are. All right. So at Riverbend, not a lot here. The improvement was a left turn signal. So we have left turn lanes, and a lot of times when cars were stacked, you couldn't. If you were right here trying to turn left and the car was sitting in the turn lane, you couldn't see past that car. So what we've done, if you haven't noticed, you'll notice it after I tell you this, but we've added a protected left turn. So there's a green light that gives you a green arrow so you can make that left movement into Sun City or that left movement into Riverbend. So that was a small, quick, easy project. As easy as it was, you can ask Chairman Passman. We had to go all the way to the very top of DOT to get that installed. So seems like the easy things are just as hard as the hard things. So at Cherry Point, let me reorder. So this is Cherry Point 170 coming north. Cherry Point, the Oakady Elementary School is right here. So not major improvements right now as part of this project. There's an existing signal, but it's on a curve, so we're just going to put an advanced warning head for now. However, the county, separate from this project, is working on some plans in coordination with the school and the development that's on the southern side to make sure that this Cherry Point Road is available so it can handle what we see right now is stacking on, especially in the mornings, and drop off the students. And it starts to even back up almost to 170. So we're trying to make sure that that doesn't happen. So Argent Boulevard right here and 170. So right now, again, this is a short-term fix. We're trying not to add asphalt, just maybe repair some asphalt or restripe. But right now we have a heavy left turn movement coming off Argent. It backs up. How far does it back up? A long ways, right? But we've got this right turn lane that's underutilized. So what we're going to do, has anybody driven out there in the last 2 days? Has anybody seen the work here? So they actually have it under construction as we talk. So they're doing the milling, and hopefully in the next couple days, weather dependent, they're going to pave it back and restripe it. So what we're going to do, and sorry the angle keeps changing on, we're going to restripe that as 2 left turn lanes, and that lane that was the right turn previously, it'll be a left or a right. So this will be restriped as 2 lanes to turn left, and then this one you can still turn right out of, but it'll have the opportunity. So the signals will get changed to allow for that timing. So there should be a lot more capacity for that movement that backs up past Shortcut right now. So none of these are really out of the box. Yes, sir. Yep. That's right. So that person is trying to turn right. They will have to wait in that left turn traffic. Again, long term, we're gonna definitely work on that. But with short term, with limited funding, we're working on the biggest movement. But you're all right. All right. So this is 462. So now I'm totally backwards. This is Beaufort, and this is Oakady going that way. So this is 462. What we have here is we have obviously a heavy left coming into Argent. We're also, this is the first signal that you get when you're coming from Beaufort down to the south. This is the first signal. So you're seeing a lot of 40,000 cars almost that come to a signal. So that's the reason you see that backup. What we're working on is there's so much demand for that left turn that it backs into the fast lane, and we start to see accidents there, and then obviously accidents here. So what we're doing, this is relatively minor, and again, if you drive this way, we actually have black asphalt out there, which is really nice. Most times when I talk about something, it's a year away, but we're talking about stuff that's actually happening now. So we're extending this storage lane all the way back as far as we can, and then we'll be retiming the signal to allow for that left turn to make flush through and make its improvements there. All right, so 278. What's cooking on 278 per the study? So to the north is Argent Boulevard, and to the very edge of the page is the interchange. At some point, the interchange will need major improvements. That is not at this very second. We're going to get to that, but not one, it's not in the near-term projects beyond what I just described, but long-term projects, there will also be some interchange improvements. So the major things that are going on that the report said is New River Parkway has a lot of cut-through traffic, and that cut-through traffic is going to continue and going to grow. Currently, that's a private road. So there's not a lot of things we can do at local government and public funds until the opportunity, maybe that does become a public road at some point. But what the traffic study said is it would make a lot more sense for that to be the signalized entry onto 278. So if you live up in Riverton Point or up in East Argent, you could come all the way out to 278, come across Argent and come there, and then you have a signal to make a left turn on the 278. But if we put a signal there at number 3, then the existing signal currently is at Walmart at number 2. Well, then it's going to be too close to one another. Again, this is 55 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour coming into this section. So we have to have at least a half-mile space in between signals on a road that size. So what this plan is saying is, let's take the signal at number 2 and move it up to Argent at number 1, and then install a new signal at number 3. So if you're coming on Argent right now and you're trying to either come on 278 and turn on the Argent, or it's not so bad with the right turn headed out of town, but if you're trying to turn a left back into town, it's complicated. So those are the highlights on 278. The other thing that we actually, I think the transportation subcommittee of the POA for Sun City, you guys, reached out and asked about number 6, so that's the main entrance at Sun City Boulevard. There's left turns on 278 turning into the neighborhood on both sides, but not coming out of the neighborhood. So we have a study going right now to see, again, not only does a warrant have to be met for the entire signal, but if you add a phase, every phase that you add specifically to the side street takes away time from the main street. So it introduces delay, and so it's a little bit of play on how much time you allow to the side street versus how much delay you're going to introduce to the main street. But we're looking at that. So that is under design right now. We've got got traffic counts and engineers looking at that. Yes, sir.
West of number 1, there's a lot of backup comes into the slow lane.
Okay.
Is there anything that can be done about approach lane to that new traffic lane?
Not currently. That would be in the longer term. So, and I'll talk about what we're doing with some signals, including this signal, in a little bit. But yes, so that turn lane really could be lengthened so it doesn't spill out into the 278 main. That's right. We'll get to that, but it probably won't be in the near short term. That would be part of the bigger project. But it's a very, very good comment. I'm sorry. The question was, when you're coming on eastbound on 278 and turning left onto Argent, right? Left onto Argent, a lot of times that has a heavy movement and spills back into 278. Are there any improvements going to happen there? And the answer is yes, but not as far as the short term. We'll look at that and extend that turn lane a little bit later. But I will come back to that intersection as far as what we're looking at. So that's 278. And then this is a little bit hard to read, but the red dots implement the proposed signal locations of where that study that Hardyville said. So obviously 278 and Argent we just mentioned, New River Parkway, and then this is Sun City, so that's Sergeant Jasper, am I right there? Sergeant Jasper? And then obviously y'all got to come up with a good name for these guys. And then up here is Shortcut, and then Argent Boulevard and 170 up there. So this gets into exactly what your question is. So not included on this, so we've got several of these signals that are in some sort of progress, and I'll try to describe that to you. But in addition to these signal locations, we're also looking back at 170 and 462. The county has purchased property on that curve on the east side for a future law enforcement center. So formerly known as the cooler track, there's about 100 acres there. So when you're at the signal and you do immediate eyes right, that is county-owned property for a future law enforcement center. So as we were looking at 170, and we said, well, heck, if there's opportunity to realign that intersection at 170, which is just off the page here, is in the middle of a curve. Like, that is the worst thing from a planning perspective, engineer's perspective, you would ever want for an intersection is being the curve. So we're going to look at relocating the existing signal going to 462. We need to get a fancier ringtone, something that has some jazz to it. If it's going to ring, at least have a good song to it. So 170, we're going to look at relocating the 462 signal between John Paul and the ACE school, which would align with the future plans for the law enforcement center on the opposite. So that way we have multiple users having safe access to a signal in a straight section versus a curved section. So that's one. Second one, just off the map as well, is at Oldfield and East Argent. So there's a lot of construction on East Argent. Oldfield, if you ever go see friends there, that is a very challenging place to get out of their driveway. So we're looking at signal improvements there. Obviously, we talked about Argent already, so we're doing some improvements in the near term, but also long-term improvements when we widen Argent to 4 lanes. The city of Hardeeville is working with DOT for plans on shortcut. So those plans are in design and they're currently under permit with DOT and US, or DHEC and some other agencies. So that one's under design. Yeah, let me hit all of them, then I'll come back to timeline. But yes, I'll come back. So not a lot of action on Sergeant Jasper at this moment. New Riverside. So here's the thing on who lives in Riverton Point? Or who lives in Argent East? Who uses New River Parkway? Somebody raise your hand. Okay. So here's the complicated thing on that intersection, and actually at Oldfield intersection. So all of this acreage that is part of the PUD that is East Argent developer is responsible for installing the loop road. They're going to, right now it doesn't connect, it will connect, that's his responsibility. Also, in addition to that, he has some off-site improvements that are his responsibility. One being this intersection and the other being Oldfield intersection. So do we as local government want to spend public resources of what the private developer is required to improve? The short story is no, but what we do want is we want it fixed now. Well, you can usually have 2 out of 3 things, but you can't have all 3. So either you want it now and we pay for it with public funds, or we want it later and paid out of private funds, but it's really hard to have all 3. So we're working with the engineers on that and all these other signals to come up with a coordinated plan. So we're going to work with the developers engineers. We've got some of our own engineers that are already working on 170. The town is doing some work, the town of Hardeeville, Jasper County, Beaufort County, and DOT. We're in the process in the next week, I believe we're trying to get a meeting set up to coordinate all those signals, plus I didn't finish the signal here. DOT has a design on that ready to go. They're just waiting for funding. And then also some improvements at Margaritaville. So Margaritaville, anybody drive that way? Anybody sat in traffic at the new signal at Margaritaville? Yeah, so you got 55 mile an hour, 65 mile an hour traffic. That wherever your first intersection is, that's where you're going to start to see the first backup. So now it was starting here, now it's moving back to Margaritaville. So there's some improvements that we want to do there. So timeline, what does that look like? All of these are working in over the next year or 2 years, there's a good chance that these are installed in some form or fashion. However, some of them are moving faster than others. So the one that's moving the fastest, obviously Argent Boulevard, what we're doing out there now. We've got conceptual design on the relocation, so it still has a ways out for it to get full design, permitting. We got to coordinate with DOT, coordinate with the schools. Oldfield and 170 and Argent and New River are the 2 priorities. Those 2 are the ones that we've got to coordinate with the developer. Has anybody driven lately to 278 and noticed the new signal at Windmill Harbor? Anybody seen that? Okay, anybody live in Windmill Harbor? All right, good, because they like it, but they don't like it. So what's happened at Windmill Harbor is what we're trying to do here. So long term, what happens to this is there's going to be additional left turn lanes, additional decel lanes, a whole bunch of improvements here that the developer's required to make. So we want to make sure the developer pays for those improvements, but that may be a year or 2. So what can we do quicker than that? And that's what this meeting with the engineers is going to take place. On Windmill Harbor, thanks to our council members and DOT coordination, that was not supposed to be installed until the end of the bridge project, which is many, many years out still. But we've got permission from DOT to advance that signal because it was going to be in the final plans to install that. And then we were able to work a quick design. Now, it's not a beautiful mast arms with the black mast arms. It's just a simple wooden pole with strings, but it's a functioning light. So that is what we're going to try to accomplish with that. We were able to get that signal from design, approval, and construction in within 6 months. So I'm not saying that that's going to happen for this, but that's the model that we are going to try and kick off in the next week when we have this meeting with the 4 or 5 different engineers and the county, and town involved, city involved. So I know I drove this way. I don't drive that way very often, but I had a meeting at TCL a couple weeks ago. I went up that way. I tried to get out, and I didn't understand it to the full degree. After driving that, I fully understand the pain there. And the pain is, it was a dump truck driver directing traffic from his car. He's like, "Oh, it's your turn to go." I was like, "This is an accident waiting to happen. Like, this is bad." So I recognize it, and again, local government is working even though you don't see it working. So we are working behind the scenes to try to get that as fast as possible, and it may be a coordinated effort where we spend marginal amount of public funds to get a signal implemented sooner than later, even though the turn lanes aren't there yet. So the turn lanes are the bigger costs that we're going to work with the developer to make sure they pay for those costs. But at that point, the signal will just have to be upgraded because the signal will already be existing. DOT has a design set ready to go. They were already going to do this. It was going to be the same small step, big step. So start with a wooden pole and strain wires at Argent in 278 last year. But their funding got pulled to another project, and so they didn't get it done. So we're working back with them. Hopefully their funding's back. If not, we're still going to work with them and try to get it. The design is ready, it's permitted, it's just a matter of funding. And again, it won't be the extended turn lane at this moment, but it will be a signal, and that's what we're working towards. Margaritaville, what we're seeing there is people that are trying to either the construction traffic or lawn services or any other professional services, they're trying to turn left, and then a lot of times there's nobody in the lane, and it's got all the cars from 95 just sitting there. So we're working on figuring out the right solution to allow those trucks, because again, a lot of them are dump trucks or contractor trucks. So there's a lot of traffic going into Margaritaville. They have a lot more expansion to do as well, just like Sun City's growing. So we want to provide them a safe left, but we also don't want to block 65,000 cars in the morning. So we're working all those together. So if we start at Margaritaville, that's one. Help me count them, because sometimes it's hard to count and talk. But help me count this: 1, 2, 3, 4 at Shortcut. We're skipping this one for now. 4 at Shortcut, 5 at Argent, 6 at Oldfield, and 7 at 462. So we are working on developing and designing and constructing 7 signals, either enhancements or new signals, in hopefully the next 2 years. Hopefully some of those will be a lot sooner than that, but that's the kind of time that we're trying to work within. So again, a lot of work behind the scenes, even though it's not visible all the times. We are working as hard as we can on that. So next steps, what do we do? So like I said, we're started with the small steps on 170. What we're also doing, that study was done in 2019. So what type of accidents and growth has happened over the last 4 years? I think it would be significant. So if there was a intersection that didn't meet the warrant 4 years ago, now we want to reevaluate to see if it does meet the warrant now, because more traffic, more accidents. So we're getting an update on that study. We're starting some of these short-term projects. I didn't mention this. So the pavement, the work that they're doing at 462 and Argent Boulevard right now is temperature dependent. So we're getting towards the end of paving season in South Carolina, which I'm sure in other places they deal with freezing a lot better than we do. But down here, when it's cold, it brings a lot of work to a halt until the spring. So what happens basically from December 15th to March 15th, the asphalt plants are shut down, and they really don't do any asphalt work. Now, they may try to get some before or after those days, but it's all temperature restricted. The problem is all the work that they're going to be doing on these roads has to be done at night. That's a DOT standard, and you're on such a big road, you're not impacting the daily traffic, so that has to be done at night. So once it gets less than 45 degrees at nighttime, it's really, the asphalt season's done until you get that. So they're going to try to finish where we are at Argent Boulevard and 170 and 462 over the next month and have that finished. You'll see a pause, so not a lot of activity going on, and then come March, they're going to come back and start at the 278 interchange. Not sure what piece, whether they're going to be on 278 proper or they're going to be on the 170 component, but that's when you're going to start to see major improvements on 170. The fourth bullet here, initiate initial design and NEPA process. So NEPA process is an environmental review. If you have federal funds in your project, you've got to follow this federal guidelines, the National Environmental Protection Act. I think that's the acronym. Anyways, so this is what you see on 278. 278's been going through this for a long time. It's a long process. The good thing is we're not crossing any marsh or any bodies of water, and hopefully everybody in this room and every other room that we talk to is for the project. That's not always the case when we're talking to other folks throughout the county, specifically on 278. So in order to do that, we had a great meeting with DOT about 3 weeks ago, and we were telling them, like, look, beyond 278 and the 2018 sales tax projects from Ladies Island and the pathways, our most prioritized project in the entire region is the Triangle. In addition to that, what's come up even more recently as maybe a second priority, or maybe even 1A and 1B, is the continuation of widening 278 all the way to the interstate. So DOT is currently working on the interstate widening projects. Hopefully at the end of next year, they'll have the first section out from 0 to 8 to go from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. So that is intended to go out to construction at the end of next year, and they're already working on design and permitting on the second section from 8 to 21, and from there they're going from 21 to 33. So as far as the interstate is concerned, in the next 10 years, we will have 6 lanes from Georgia to Yamasee, basically. But what that does is we're going to have 6 lanes on the interstate, then you're going to get off on 278 and have 4 lanes until you get to 170, then it's back to 6 lanes. So we've got a pinch point. So even though the triangle is important, it's just as important or equally as important that we look at 278 from Argent Boulevard all the way back to the interstate. So we're working on that, and the gentleman from DOT said, look, that's a big number. He's like, what number are we talking about? I was like, well, it's probably close to $300 million for all those road improvements. He's like, that's a really scary number. But the hardest part is to get the project started, because you can't raise your hand for grant funding, you can't raise your hand for DOT funding until your project is developed. So what we're working on now is a short-term funding plan with DOT and with the Jasper County, Beaufort County, and town of Hardyville to just get the ball rolling. So we got the ball rolling on the short-term improvements, but design on the long-term improvements for all 3 of those roads and the extension of 278. And then once we have the ball rolling, which may be a couple years for us to be at a position to say, hey, we've got our plans that are pretty much complete, we're almost nearing going out to bid, that's when you go fishing for the big fish, for the big money. However, this is one thing that's real important. So funding. There's not a magic pot that Jasper County has, that Beaufort County has, or the Hardyville has to fund $300 million worth of projects. It just doesn't exist. So the way you do that is you have to work, one, strategically, and then develop it. So the biggest opportunity that we have at a local level is through local option sales tax. What that does is it provides the bait to put on your hook to go fish for bigger funds. So a good example is 278. So when 278 started, it was a $240 million project. It was plus or minus from 200 to 300. It ended up being 240 was the initial design. We did not have $240 million to design and build 278. But we said, hey, we have an idea. let us pitch this idea to DOT. We said, what about if we go and get some local money, would you join us? And they said, you know what, sounds like a good idea. So we went and passed in 2018 a sales tax, and $80 million of the $120 million that was pledged was to go to the bridge. Well, $80 million is only 1/3 of $240 million. So how are we going to get the rest? Well, we had now had a vision, and we had some local money, so you can't go fishing and expect to catch a fish if you don't have anything on your hook. Well, the way you bait a hook for infrastructure project is local money. So we said, hey, DOT, we want to do this project. They were interested, I don't know if you know, but when you go over the bridges, there's 4 separate independent bridges that make up the route to Hilton Head. Only one of those was in a condition that they deemed need replacement. The rest of them were good enough. So they were going to spend $40 million to replace the one span. They said, well, you know what? If you want to do this bigger project and replace them all, we're in on that, but all we've got is $40 million. And we said, well, you know what? That's good enough. Now we've got $80 million plus $40 million, so we've got $120 million. So then we went to Department of Commerce, the State Infrastructure Bank, and we said, hey, Infrastructure Bank, we have a regionally significant project that is an economic benefit and driver to the state that we have 50% funded and would like for you to come along with us. Now, again, their name is State Infrastructure Bank. So they want to see a return on investment. So when you go get a house loan, do they want you to just put in the minimum 5%, or would they rather see 20% equity? They want to see the more equity. So it de-risks the project for the bank, the more money that you put in buying your down payment. Same thing on a project level. So we had 50% of the project covered. The other applications at the time may have only had 10 or 20% in their application. So at the time in 2020, we had the highest ranked application in the entire state. So we took our $80 million, got 40 from DOT, and then ended up getting 120 from the State Infrastructure Bank. So we got a fully funded project of which we're only paying a third. In addition to that, our third is coming from sales tax. A lot of our sales tax is paid by out-of-towners. So we're working on the exact percentage, but it's estimated around 40% of that is paid by out-of-towners. So if you flip that, 60% of sales tax funding of that $80 million is paid by Beaufort County citizens. So trying to do the math in my head. So right here we had 60% of 80, which is the county share, so $48 million out of a $240 million project, so 20%. So what we were able to do with the sales tax is we were able to match it up 4 to 1. So we put $1, every dollar that we put in, somebody else put $4. And if you're into any type of financing, you'll take that return on investment every day of the week. So without the vision of, hey, we want to do a bigger project, not just replace the one span, and without the local money, 278 corridor would have never come to life. Now we still have some hurdles to work through, and we're working through that, but the reason I say all that is to come back to this. We have a vision, and you need to hear that. Local government has a plan. We're not all sitting back there and sitting with our feet propped up in the air. There is a plan. People are working on it, but in order to complete the plan, we've got to put some local funding in it, which would be a future sales tax opportunity. And if successful for that, then we can go and ask for more funding. So we're getting started on as much as we can right now. While we work on the plans, that'll give us opportunity to go work on additional funding, and then with the plans and the funding coming together, we'll be able to put the project out and get this road improvements that you guys are surrounded by improved. The county has a signal maintenance agreement with DOT, so DOT owns the signals, but we, through that agreement, maintain the timing and the operations. Well, so what's going on in Buckwalter, a fully action signal has 8 phases. So people can go straight, people can turn left, this turn movement can turn right, that can turn left. The more phases that you introduce, the more delay. So a signal is great because it makes the intersection safer, potentially, depending on what you're looking at. But it also introduces delay. So at Buckwalter, we've got 60,000 cars, so 170 and 278 have combined. We've got 60,000 cars coming. And then once you get past Buckwalter, you see it start to free up a little bit. The reason is we have Buckwalter and Bluffton Parkway that is shouldering part of the load. So those roads are carrying 20,000 cars, and that section of 278 is 50,000 cars. But the delay is coming from that intersection because we've got so many phases that are taking time away from the major 278. So we are looking at that to see if we can improve that. And then they are coordinated as you go on, but every couple years that coordination loses its sharpness. So we are scheduling a re-coordination for all the signals from now the new one at Pepper Hall all the way to Moss Creek, and that is under plan right now. So the design speed is, so the question was the retiming on 278, what is the design speed? And you guys might correct me, I believe it's 55 in that section? There's a 45 and a 55. Yeah, so it'll be synced up with the speed limit, and the goal of timing is that, just as simple as it sounds, that you have a platoon of cars, and that when they get a green light, the hope is that the next light is green and they stay together. What happens if when that platoon breaks up, then you don't get that successive, and that's when you get to start-stop. So if you're driving the speed limit or 5 miles over the speed limit and you're getting the beginning of that platoon, theoretically you should not hit it. If you're going over the speed limit or under the speed limit, you're more than likely going to get out of sync of that platoon. But back to your point, that only works when they're working together in harmony. They're a little out of sync right now, just because we're 3 years out from the last retiming. When we retime that here soon, next year, we should see some improvement. So the question was on Argent Boulevard. I talked about all the lights except the one at Sergeant Jasper at the edge of Sun City. What's going on with that light and what's the timing? What's going on there is that signal location is where we want the signal to be when the warrant is met. But the warrant has not been triggered, so we're not working on that one actively like the other ones that we know are fully warranted at this time.
The bridge that's supposed to go over there, is that part of your domain, or is that Sun City?
Sun City is
Okay.
doing that separate from any of the work we're doing at local
Okay.
government. Pulte.
Two questions on Argent. How does Shortcut Road warrant a light before Riverside does? And if it does warrant a light, are they going to improve the road on the right turn at Shortcut?
Yeah, so on that one, I'm not sure, Hardyville's been working on that one, so I haven't been as involved. That's a better ringtone. I mean, you need to learn over here. Y'all need to sync up. What's that? That's all right. So I haven't been as active in Shortcut, but to make that light function, there will be right turn lanes and left turn lanes associated with that. So the deal that Hardyville has with DOT is that Hardyville's got to get it all planned and permitted, and Hardyville's got to construct the geometry, the road turn lanes, and then DOT is going to install the signal and the brains to the
Well, I mean,
signal.
Shortcut Road is about a lane and a half, not even 2 full lanes right now. So
They have to do some
if-
widening there.
If you're looking at the warrant just coming from the housing development to the left, or the west side of Argent, it can't be anywhere near the size of Riverside with Riverton Point, Argent East, the new rental housing, the other new development. It just amazes me that they would be warranted before Riverside. And the other question is, what do they project the increase in traffic to be on Argent when you put in a left-hand turn signal to avoid the absolute worst left turn, which is 170, or 278 onto 170, and now you're going to have a light, and you're going to have a double left-hand turn off Argent, which is going to put even more dump trucks and shortcut takers. What do they project that increase to be based on those changes?
I don't know the numbers right off the top, but there are some traffic impact studies, both that East Argent had to perform and both that were in all three of those studies. So long-term, shortcut off of 170, you won't be able to turn left onto 170. That dump truck would have to come to the signal that we're improving at Argent to make that turn. But when that dump truck's returning back to where it came from, I guess, to get more dirt, it would come up Argent and turn right at Shortcut, and then right on 170 head back down south. So that has been accounted for in all the studies that we're planning as far as what's going to happen in the modeling there.
When we started the meeting here, you were talking about how the capacity for a two-lane road is 20,000 cars. Presumably that's 10,000 per lane. And how, you know, when you graduate to a longer road, then it can jump to 40,000 or 60,000. What do you mean by capacity?
So,
And what happens with that capacity when the population of Argent East starts to increase by several thousand?
yep. So capacity is how many cars can fit on the road.
In a 24-hour period?
Yeah, so
End to end?
back to 278, not that this is about 278, but we just had a very in-depth study performed on 278 by a specialist traffic engineer. And one of the graphs that they showed is on that project, it's going from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. Well, why do we need 6 lanes on the bridge to Hilton Head? Well, this is what's happened there, which will happen here unless we proactively put it together as part of a system. So the road itself is one component. It's just like your body. You have several organs that are working together. Any one organ failure can kill you, but you've got to work on all your organs together. So on 278, the graph that the consultant provided was in whether we need 6 lanes or not, and the answer was yes, because in 2017, you could see the traffic growing, then all of a sudden you saw a plateau. And what that was is that 4-lane section, which has 60,000 cars on the bridge right now, was at max capacity. So 4 lanes should carry 40,000, it's carrying 60,000, and it cannot. So what's happening is 5 years ago, it might take you 15 or 20 minutes to sit in traffic to get to Hilton Head. What you see is that grows over time. So now you've got an hour or an hour and a half of delay that you're sitting in traffic. So back up here to the triangle, the goal is to provide, right now we're at 37,000. So it can go all the way up to 60,000, but you get serious delay. So we're trying to provide the capacity, so 60,000 vehicles on a 6-lane road with only 40,000 currently driving. And as the traffic continues, it's not going to stop at 40,000, it's going to keep growing. And the way we manage that is, one, we provide the space, but then we start looking at zoning and uses of property and mass transit and other modes of transportation to work together.
Are we widening Argent? We adding more lanes?
Yes, that's in the plan. So it
2
would
to
go
4?
from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, that's correct.
And what's the timetable for that?
That's the same, all the 3 projects described in the triangle would be worked together. So we're working on the preliminary engineering, and then again, infrastructure projects. Anybody on 278, sorry to use that as an example, but it's a fresh example. The triangle project is a lot less complicated than the bridge project. The bridge project has been going on for 6 years, and we're still in design. I say that because I don't want to walk out of here with everybody's expectation that the triangle project is going to happen tomorrow. However, we have plans that are in motion to speed that up. So what the time period that we're experiencing on 278, hopefully we can improve upon that to deliver that faster than the speed of which 278 is progressing. So this process, this environmental process, is very inclusive. It looks at a whole bunch of different factors. It looks at noise, it looks at natural resources, a whole bunch of different things. So in order to have federal funding, which we don't have enough project money for the project, so we're going to request federal funding, you've got to go through this NEPA process. Part of that NEPA process will be a sound study. And if it comes back that meets the threshold for the noise abatement of whatever that, whether that's a, so that will be evaluated, yes, sir.
Jared, I want to thank you. As usual, you do a splendid job.